The fire god said, "Having heard the sage's instructions, the hunter remained seated like a painted image there in that forest itself. However, since he had not engaged himself in the persistent practice of the teachings, his heart was not fully established in the supreme state." I don't think we should doubt the hunter's resolve here. His problem would have been that he was pursuing an idea of the teachings rather than the teachings themselves. This is a very subtle distinction. We are so used to pursuing ideas. Our reality is actually ideas about reality. We constantly overlook our attention. Our attention is that in which reality arises. We constantly overlook it. It's always there. It's always here. It's extremely subtle. So the hunter, although he might have a very deep instinct, a very deep intuition of the truth, he's still thrashing around. He's still lost in his notions about the truth, his notions concerning the truth, not in the underlying reality that underpins his notions. Instead, he was being tossed about as on the crest of waves or on a revolving mechanism. He felt helpless, as if he were being attacked by a crocodile and unable to defend himself. He might have had some insight. He might have touched the truth. It's difficult to know whether the hunter's a spiritual seeker here or a spiritual practitioner, because this can happen to the spiritual practitioner too. Let's give the hunter the benefit of the doubt and let's assume he's a spiritual practitioner. I think it's fair to say this actually. He must have had some insight into the truth, some direct experiencing. And what happens is, it might be that some people, that's it. But it seems to me that the more likely scenario is a storm kicks up. The spiritual practitioner can be full of doubts, even though they've touched the supreme Brahman. Because the psyche recoils, the psyche asserts itself. The psyche cannot accommodate this truth. The spiritual practitioner has their work cut out for them. They seek to come back to the truth, to bring the attention back to itself. But are they coming back to a memory of the truth? Are they coming back to a feeling that was inspired by the truth and mistaking that for the truth? This is the arena of the spiritual practitioner. It isn't suddenly all equanimity and bliss. That equanimity and bliss can be touched upon. I sometimes wonder if many modern teachers of Advaita who relate themselves back to Ramana Maharshi are engaging with this process. It's quite possible that if you're a spiritual practitioner and you become a guru, then you're shielded from that process to a certain extent. He was full of doubts. He was constantly asking himself, is this Nirvana? Or maybe this is not Nirvana and something else is Nirvana. He thought, because the world appearance has arisen in ignorance, the sage's teachings are not firmly rooted in my heart. Hence I should get away from it. Attaining a subtle body through the performance of austerities, I should go far, far away to where even space does not exist. Thus he proved that he was still utterly ignorant and that the teaching of the sage had been utterly useless, because it had not been assimilated and it had not become active. He was still thinking that it depends on certain conditions. He ought to get away from this world appearance altogether. But this is missing the point completely. The current conditions have to be completely accepted. The current indications are the indicator of Nirvana. he abandoned hunting. Accompanied by the sage, he began to practice intense penance. He continued to practice austerities for many thousands of years, having adopted the mode of living appropriate to ascetics. You think the sage might have told him that this was a waste of time? But it was clearly something he had to go through. It was clearly something he thought was the right thing to do. So the sage has got no choice but just to let him get on with it. One day he again asked the sage the following question: how shall I ever rest in the self?